pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up is item C, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, May 11th, 2021.
Motion is made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Item D is approval of the consent agenda. Comments, questions by the board?
The minutes, we're changing the system. I think we
Press
need,
your bar. Did you press your?
yeah, it's red light.
Okay.
So do you want me to talk louder or softer?
You're fine. We're just
I
making
can
sure
hear
it's
you.
on.
We're changing this, and for two things, I don't think it's a good idea. One, it's too much work for the clerk's office to put this kind of detail. And second is, it's too much work for the people being quoted to go back to the recording and see if that's what they really said. Since the recording is not the official record, this is the official record. So what do you, I don't know, what was the background of this? Because that was...
Thank you for your question. And as you know, the old recording secretary is gone, and we have some new people doing it. And there's a little bit of learning curve. And they were used to, in the areas that they worked in doing it, having much more detailed minutes. Some people on the Board of Trustees like more information, some like less. We're going to try to find a happy medium to where we're hitting the high points, but at the same time, keep it to a minimum as possible.
Yeah, I personally, I like the detail, but yeah, he's right in that respect. We got to make sure they're right.
Is the board packet being prepared by the clerk or still in the supervisor's office?
The supervisor's office.
And it's going to stay there?
Yes.
All right. So I guess you got a little extra time, but all right. I don't think this is a good idea. Stuart's name on page 5 is spelled wrong.
Thank you.
I think there was some other typo, but I don't remember what it was now.
It was another member of the public's name was wrong, and we changed that.
Okay.
Change Santops.
Yes.
Okay, any other changes to the minutes or any other questions or comments under consent agenda?
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda for the regular meeting Tuesday, May 11th, 2021.
Motion is made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. Item E is public comment, limited to 3 minutes. This is not your only opportunity during the evening. There will also be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. And we also encourage comments and questions on individual agenda items as long as those are germane to that particular topic. So tonight, I will take care of let me set my timer here, and we are good to go. Mr. Zantow.
Hey, is it working? Mr. Supervisor, I'm sorry, Mr. Garner forgot his glasses. I'm going to take those to him.
All righty. Okay.
This is National Police Week. First of all, I want to thank Chief Titterington and our officers for keeping us safe. We have a great group of officers, and they need to know we appreciate the job they do. At the April 6th Township Board meeting, Trustee Stewart called all families and veterans and patriots that have attended rallies in Lansing and Washington on January 6th as domestic terrorists. I was in Lansing on January 6th. There was absolutely no violence or destruction of property, burning of buildings, or any other acts of insurrection that have been described as peaceful protests in other cities. At the April 27th board meeting, Vietnam veteran Dan Callan and I asked Stewart to apologize for his remarks, which he failed to do. We especially feel he was insulted to veterans. Unfortunately, Dan is unable to attend tonight. Looks like there's some patriots here tonight that would like to hear an apology from Mr. Stewart too. And by the way, I'd like to, here's the people that were there. I don't see one person with a torch or a pitchfork or anything. It was peaceful.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to move on then to new business. Item F1 is the fiscal year 2021 budget amendments. Finance Director Ginger Moriarty is here tonight. Well, we have the updated one on our desk.
There's a new one.
We have it on the dais.
We have the updated one at our desks.
Can I touch that?
No, it should be on,
Can I move it?
just a little bit.
Just a little bit? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Glenn, can you hear her in the back? Okay. We're still, we're still feeling our way through a new sound system here, so.
So tonight we have before us fiscal year 2021 budget amendments to the general fund. Tonight we're recognizing revenue in the amount of $115,569.50. And we're also recognizing a request for general fund appropriations in the amount of $107,700. The motion before you has an attachment that includes an outline of each of the expenditures that are being requested to amend the budget by the general ledger number for that department's expense, as well as the revenue that's being recognized at the lower part of the schedule in the amount of the $115,569.50. Please keep in mind, I'm not the department head for each of these departments, but I'll try to answer any questions that you have as it relates to any of these budget items being requested and or defer to the administration as they've reviewed these items with those department heads and seek additional information if needed. Questions as to any of these items that are being requested?
Any questions by the board?
So just quickly, so the golf course revenue, that's their share, the revenue line is their share that they will contribute?
So the agreement for the golf course was that any profit that was realized for fiscal year 2020 would be split 50-50 with the township.
Yeah,
So this is our 50% of the revenue that was
Okay.
recognized by the golf course. And because that revenue was for fiscal year 2020, once they reconciled their financial statements, we then received that revenue in fiscal year 21. So we are now amending the budget to recognize that revenue.
okay, I got it. Because it says 50% cost share, it should be 50% revenue or profit share, right?
Yeah, it's profit share.
Yeah.
Let's change it, please.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Yes, the $2,000 for the grading of Powell Road, it's a county road.
Yep.
The county has almost no township roads to grade anymore, because we pave so many. They won't grade the roads?
They will not grade that road for free because it is not considered, it's considered an access road and not a thoroughfare in the traditional sense.
So we're paying the $2,000 to who?
Wayne County Department of Public Services.
That's outrageous.
We're paying them to grade their road.
It's basically a driveway at this point. So that's why we're investigating the closure of that road and creating a new access off of Ann Arbor Trail, which is the way it used to
Would
be.
they grade it then?
At that point, we'll have to make arrangements with the county whereby the road would probably be deeded over to the township or would be abandoned, at which point it would just be nothing more than a maintenance access road for the golf course.
Okay, so there would be a private road for us then eventually.
We would own it, it would be part of the golf course property.
Ginger, of these items here, how many of these have we either committed to or, in other words, pre-commit before we made the budget change? In other words, we committed to the spending or to the vendor before the budget was changed, which is a little backwards. In the private sector, you get the budget approved before you approve the spending. But we do something different here sometimes.
Well, the first two items are presented to the budget. You can see they're board resolutions. The first items that carry forward from fiscal year 20. It was an item that was presented to the board at the end of October. It was for the radio consoles and the dispatch. That had a little bit of items where we had planned for the budget in 2020. When we had the COVID pandemic, the board had decided to remove some projects from 2020 in the spring. This was one of those items that was removed until we could assess our financial situation. Later that year in 2020, towards the end of the summer, we put this project back into the budget. By the time the bid award was reviewed for the cost to determine what we would have to pay for this, it was brought back to the board with a budget amendment. And given the timing of the year, by the time the board went ahead and awarded the bid with the additional budget, we had Thanksgiving, we had Christmas, we had New Year's. We basically had 8 weeks at the end of the fiscal year, in addition to the COVID pandemic, to deal with, to try to get the radio console fully installed. So this is really just a carry forward of that budget. And I don't think any of us were thinking about whether or not to put that in the 21 budget, and probably should have, given the situation. But the project has been completed. But because the fiscal year ended December 31st, the additional revenue, or the additional budget that went with this project, went back to fund balance. So we're asking to put it back into the dispatches budget. The second item was also presented to the board. That was a contract that was presented this year and approved by the board. It lacked the motion for an authorization to appropriate budget with it. We have not yet had any expenditures or bills yet paid for that, but I'm presuming that we'll be receiving some shortly, as I believe activity has begun on that contract. The third item, township board photos and the photo shoot. I believe once the new board was elected, there were some photos that were taken and some bills that were associated with that. While we have not overspent the township board's budget, as far as the expenditures go, we do want to make sure that we have sufficient budget for the entire year, and this was not a planned item when we set the budget. So we want to make sure we accommodate for both the photos and then the professional development in the event that any of the Board of Trustees decide to attend educational classes like the Michigan Township Association, which there has been some expression by some of the board members that they'd like to attend these classes. We want to make sure that we have sufficient budget to do that. Should the Board of Trustees decide not to attend classes, those funds would be returned back to fund balance. The expenses for the second floor boardroom broadcasting, that will come out of our restricted fund balance for PEG fees. We have more than sufficient funds there. At the end of 2019, we had over $283,000 of restricted fund balance. At the end of this year's audit, we'll have over $419,000. We have appropriated $60,000 for this year's board sound system. So this additional $3,300 for the additional broadcast equipment will come out of that restricted fund balance as well.
Is that the room with the big table upstairs?
No, let me just clarify the term broadcasting equipment, because that's kind of a misnomer. What this is the purchase of a big screen television that would be placed on the wall in the conference room, along with a communication system for two-way Zoom-type conferencing. You may recall that one of the goals of the board for this year is to improve our ability to engage in remote and Zoom-type telecommunications meetings. So this is consistent with that request.
So does a laptop was part of this purchase?
I believe so, yeah, or some other kind of device.
Like presentations and things
Right,
of that nature.
and microphone, little camera and all that. Kind of like a big Zoom TV.
The tree removal and cleanup for the Shear Cemetery, we did have a tree that needed to be removed out there that was currently absorbed within the budget, but we want to make sure that we do have sufficient budget for the year and that we don't have any overages in that area. And in case there's additional cleanup that needs to be at the cemetery, we should probably be planning for that on an annual basis, just to make sure that we have budget in place for any events that occur at the cemetery going forward. So this is to make sure we have budget in place for that as we go forward and to cover the expenses that did occur out there earlier this spring.
Kurt, what is your guideline for spending out there? We probably spent about $25,000 on that over the last 10 years, so I just wondered.
I would be shocked if we've spent that much.
Oh,
It's in pretty bad shape.
We spent some big money before you were on the board.
Well, I know it's been in a state of disrepair for the last couple of years because of COVID, and the teacher, Mr. Sylvester from Salem, has not been able to get out there with his students. So in the case of this tree removal, this was an unexpected situation because it was a dead tree and it was big enough where it could have fallen into the road. So yeah, we can look at a line item in the future for the cemetery. which we do own, and that's been well documented and researched by our attorneys. I know the Historic District Commission would like to get more involved in the cleanup and maintenance of the cemetery as well. So we may want to, I think we're going to have a line, I hope we're going to have a line item next year for the Historic District Commission, so that might be an add-on that we could put in there for the cemetery.
Created a GL number for it as we address the 22 budget.
Right. Mr. Stewart?
Ready for a motion?
No, not yet. I think Ginger's going to go through the rest of the list here.
We just have a couple more items. The treasury wage item is a result of retirement in the fire department. One of the part-time employees there applied and moved over to the fire department. And as a result, 2 of the part-time positions in the treasury office is being merged into 1 full-time position. In order to do that, we need an additional $6,000 to cover budget for wages, fringes, medical benefits of that nature for that full-time position that will begin, I believe, 45 days after the position has been put into place.
So what, I guess I didn't pick up, what is this position in the Treasury Department? I don't,
Treasury office.
What is the Treasury
two
office?
part-time
I had
positions.
two part-time clerks.
well, Treasurer's office.
Treasurer's
Okay,
office, yep.
Okay, so what's going on? Somebody changed
I had
out?
2 part-time clerks. One of them moved over and became the administrative assistant in the fire department. The other one took the job full-time. So now I just have 1 full-time clerk instead of 2 part-time clerks.
So it's just a merge?
Yes,
of two
I
positions
took,
into one?
yes, 2 part-time equaled 1, and I just moved 2 part-time into 1 full-time.
So benefits have increased a little bit
A little bit by about,
because the person's a full-timer.
became a
6,000.
full-timer, correct.
So is that 6,000 a year?
It's prorated. It'll be like for the remainder of this year.
But then the next year, it'll be more than 6,000.
No, it'll be, well, the benefit part will be less, but the hours, the benefit part will be more, but the hours will be less because I had a part-timer work for the first 4 months. So I won't have that part-time salary of 4 months.
So who is the new administrative assistant in the fire department?
Jen Bono.
Okay, continue, please.
The last 2 items on the expenditure request is a land item for repairs for pump at the township park for the irrigation system, and professional contractual services, which we already spoke about for the grading of the road. The 2 revenue items, as we indicated, was the recognition of the revenue from the golf course for our our share of their revenues. And the last item is the recognition of the IGA agreement that we have for revenue that we will receive once we complete the Township Park jogging trail, park pathway. We will receive a reimbursement of revenue for those expenditures.
We did receive the completed IGA yesterday, so you have a copy of that. Yes. Okay, any other questions on this item? Any questions or comments from the public on this item? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Seal, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I move that the Plymouth Township Board of Trustees hereby adopt Resolution 2021-05-11-30, authorizing the Finance Director to recognize the general fund revenue in the amount of $115,569.50 and to appropriate its fund balance of $107,700. Thank you so much, Ginger.
Motion's made by Trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yeah.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next item is F2. This is the Police Department purchase installation of bullet-resistant and ballistic fiberglass barriers right here at the lobby of the police station. So tonight, I think we'll have the chief and Supervisor Fell commenting on this, but I want you to stay at your desks and use our brand-new equipment that we've spent all this money on, so that we're not running back and forth here to the podium, unless you want to, but.
No, that's fine.
Okay, and we can hear you.
Good evening. This item is something that we've discussed with the board during budget study sessions. It's something that we've been looking and wanting to do for several years now, and During the pandemic, we put some temporary barriers out there, and they're cumbersome. Each night, an employee has to take them off the counter in order to secure the front desk area. And instead of putting permanent plexiglass, we just felt due to security risk and risk assessment, it's time to fortify the desk area like most other police departments have done already. Supervisor Fell has done a great deal of research and orchestrated and not orchestrated, but conducted the bid process, and she's here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments by the board?
Yeah, so if I read this correctly, Chief, the money's going to be coming out of the forfeiture fund?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, this would not be any township funds being used. It would be the drug forfeiture fund. It is appropriate to use this expenditure for that, and that's where the funds will come from.
Great, thank you. Good use of the funds.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the board?
I have one question. You are using procedures that will pass the audit if they're federal funds, the bidding procedures?
Yes.
So you follow their rules?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, was somebody going to make a motion?
I'll do it.
Mr. Dorshevitz?
I move to approve resolution number 2021-05-11-31, authorizing the Plymouth Township Police Department to install one level 3 bullet resistant barrier and one level 3 ballistic fiberglass barrier at an amount not to exceed $24,100 of the drug forfeiture's capital outlay account by authorizing the finance director to appropriate an additional $4,100 of fund balance to the 266-300-970.000 State Drug Forfeiture Funds Capital Outlay Account.
Motion's made by Trustee
That was one
Dorshevitz, seconded by Trustee Kermy. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Motion carries.
Very good. Next is item F3.
Thank you.
Super, real quick.
Yeah.
I am grateful for the citizens of Plymouth Township to be greeted by someone. We should name them and thank the township employees. When you walk into the police department, you meet a young man who was an Eagle Scout from 4 decades ago, and he has professionally and capably handled that front desk responsibility. I'm talking about Glenn Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, we're going to move on. Item F3, Purcell Place Condominium Cluster Housing Option. Laura Haw is here tonight. Take it away.
Thank you. Evening, trustees.
We can hear you.
Okay.
She's on.
Yes.
You going to stay seated, or you want to stay seated?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can hear me, okay.
I can hear you, but let's see how it goes.
Okay. The application before you is for a residential cluster housing option known as Purcell Place Condominiums at 46200 North Territorial Road. The subject property is just over 5 acres in size and currently contains a single-family home constructed in 1961 of the former Congressman Purcell. 8 detached single-family homes are proposed for this site under a cluster housing. In a cluster housing process, there are 4 key steps. The first is for the Planning Commission to review the proposal, to have a public hearing, and then to make a recommendation to this board. In the case of this project, 2 public hearings were actually held with the Planning Commission, one in August of last year and also in January of this year. And then the Commission subsequently discussed this at their regular March and April meetings this year. Following all these reviews, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the Purcell Cluster Housing option with conditions to this body. Tonight is the second step in the process for the Board of Trustees to review the Planning Commission's recommendation, and if approved, then the applicant's next step will be to go back to the Planning Commission and develop the site development plan. So that's when the landscaping, the architecture, those site details are refined. The conditions that the Planning Commission recommended include a waiver to the front yard setback from 42 feet to 28 feet, a 40-foot wide greenbelt along North Territorial Road, a one-time payment in lieu of $20,000 paid into the newly created Historic District Commission Fund, and to work with the adjacent homeowners in Portsmouth Crossing regarding off-site landscaping and installation. On packet page 90, there is a proposed motion and a resolution of approval if it pleases the board. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments for Ms. Haw? Mrs. Haw? Ms. Haw.
Yes.
Sorry.
You haven't said what you're doing with the existing house. Is it going to be raised?
It will be demolished.
All right. What is this? This is the first time I've ever seen a contribution to the Historic District Commission. Why is this being done?
Two reasons. One is that they were, part of the original site plan was that they were supposed to construct a gazebo or some kind of outdoor amenity, and there really was not any desire to do that, nor was there any really reasonably suitable room for that kind of amenity. So from what I understand, this was all negotiated at the Planning Commission level, and the agreement was made that the developer would construct a sign, I believe, not a historic, not like a state historic marker, but some kind of a marker acknowledging that this was the former home of Congressman Purcell. And then I believe that sign is supposed to come out of this $20,000 payment in lieu, which will be a line item for the Historic District Commission that they can use in their furtherance of their activities.
So who will manage the construction and placement of the sign? Historic Commission or the developer?
It will be the developer with I'm sure, a very strong assist from the Historic District Commission, probably the chairwoman, Miss Wendy Harless, and then also our former colleague, Trustee Dempsey, I'm sure will be heavily involved in that too.
So this developer has to come back one more time with his final to this board?
Yes, and they have to come back at least twice to the Planning Commission.
Why twice? Can you help me out on that?
There's a tentative site development and then a final site development, and then it comes back to this body for the cluster housing agreement.
Got it.
So Laura, if the cluster housing option were not approved, how many homes could be built on this site?
6.
And so they're asking for 8.
Correct.
Okay. Just a general comment from me around cluster housing options. This is relevant for, I think, this one as well as the next topic. But, you know, cluster housing options are an exception to the zoning guidelines. And in order to adhere to the spirit of a cluster housing option, you've got to do one of three things. You've either got to increase the free space that's in the area. So if you wanted to put 4 houses on 4 lots, that's great. If you want to put 4 houses on 3 lots, you've got to create additional space to be done with something, a gazebo or a park or something like that. The other one is you've got to preserve special features, lakes, topography, wetlands, you know, the architecture of the place. So you've got to have something unique. And then the third thing is it's got to provide some type of other community benefit. So when I'm looking at these things and determining whether or not I want to approve it, or if other members of the board are, or if the Planning Commission, you just got to ask yourself, is this application truly in the spirit of the way the cluster housing option was written, or is it just a means to get more houses on the same amount of space? So when I'm looking at these things, that's the way I'm going to evaluate them.
I have a question. What are the sizes of the homes that are supposed to be put on this property?
I believe.
Is there a representative here from the developer?
Yes.
Members of the board, Leo Gonzalez on behalf of Leo Sauve Homes. The homes will be probably a minimum construction 2,750 square feet. They'll start at anywhere from $750,000 to $800,000.
That was my next question.
you probably asked why the smaller space. With these homes, at 2750, they're all gonna have walkouts. So they will actually live as 4,000 or 5,000 square foot homes. And our studies show that many of the empty nesters this will probably be appealing to, just want a smaller home. And there'll probably be ranches, there'll probably be some Cape Cods there as well. These are on 80-foot lots, so this are pretty large lots compared to some of the other cluster homes that you've seen around town. And the last two lots are 100-foot lots. So this does certainly offer a fair amount of open space between the homes. I might comment on the cluster and some comments that were made. This particular project, there are some woodlands that we're removing. And of course, we're obligated to replace the woodlands here. In this case, we replaced all the woodlands. In addition, we added another 52 trees on site here, in above the standard. We felt we wanted to build a development here that really set ourselves apart from everybody else out there. We had the benefit of the property to do so, and thought it would make a statement for this overall. So these tools that the township do offer in these cluster housing, there are benefits that are yielded back through these projects. This was a tricky project. It sloped very heavily to the east, and managing those slopes and engineering problems associated with that and getting a site that fit all the engineering matrices as I would call it, or could call it, had to be achieved. And through this cluster, it gave us the ability to do that.
Leo, if this project wasn't approved, but you could put 6 houses on it, would you still build?
We evaluated that, and it puts a burden on the cost as you may have heard in today's marketplace, these costs of construction, and what we call this is a single load road. We don't have the luxury of having homes on both sides of the road, thus having a smaller length of road.
Length or width of the road?
The width always got to stay the same. But when you do a single load, then you got to, in this case, because we don't have the width, it's an irregular piece. I won't call it irregular, but it's a long rectangle piece. Doesn't allow us to put homes on both sides of the property with the setbacks from the adjacent. So we looked at this pretty close, and we started off at 9 units and tailed it back to the 8 units. In order to make this project feasible with the costs of construction today, with the extra infrastructure here, and really make a project that makes an impact on the community, we felt that the 8 units is what we needed in order to justify to deliver a quality project like this. So in essence, it does give us the ability to bring a higher end product. My Tuscany is a perfect example. I mean, I think most people would admit that's a pretty quality project in town. That's the reason why it's a quality project, is because the cluster housing was available to us there, and gave us the ability to do what we did on that property. Those are albeit, mind you, those are smaller lots too, but it lives pretty well, and it doesn't seem like there's any shortage of customers that want to be part of that lifestyle.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I kind of feel like you didn't finish your thought.
I guess you'll hear my thought when I vote.
Okay.
But I guess my other comment would be, Leo, you're kind of confirming my point there, is this is for the benefit of the developer to make this a profitable endeavor and not for the unique requirements of a CHO. Planting trees is not a unique requirement.
I think this is for benefit of the entire project, that without this project could not happen, because it gives us the ability to build a quality project like this. The net result of this, by having more units, it allows me to balance costs across more units. If it were not for this development, were not for this cluster housing, projects like this may not happen.
I get it. I mean, but I have to evaluate the criteria based upon the zoning ordinance, which is It's got to take advantage of unique and special features or provide open space or some other benefit, and I'm still not hearing it for this.
So Mark,
I'm hearing make it profitable for the developer.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Mark. The only thing remarkable about this piece of property is the road noise from the freeway. There's nothing there. It's a flat piece of land that, not flat, slopes way to the big hill is to the south, towards North Territorial. So I don't see any of this, we're not saving anything. We didn't save the woods, right?
You did.
You were there, Bob, at the Planning Commission. Can you shed any light on what the thought process was? And
So there was a lot of pushback from the neighbors to the, both sides, but particularly those on, that street is what, Burning Tree Lane? What's the road?
yeah, Burning Tree Lane, and then Eaton condominiums are on the other side?
Right. I think there was a lot of pushback because of the proximity of the road to the lot line. So there was a lot of discussion around that. I don't know, Laura, if you can fill in some more gaps.
Initially, 10 units were proposed, and the road was proposed about 15 feet further to the west. And there were many comments that were raised by the adjacent homeowners about the road being in their backyard. From those discussions, the applicant did shift the road over another 15 feet or so and added some additional vegetation. It's our understanding that the applicant will be working with the homeowners to do additional landscaping on their property, which none of that would be possible if it was not under a cluster housing option.
You mean they couldn't work with the homeowners unless it was in the cluster housing option?
There would always be that option for the developer, but there would be nothing from the township to require that.
To require a buffer? I don't believe that. Our planning commission has always required buffers and been very involved in the selection of the vegetation.
But maybe if I may, to rephrase that question, what levers does the township have under the cluster housing option that we do not have under the standard option?
We have the replacement of trees, the addition of screening, purview over the architecture, and general location of the lots.
Which we would not have if we did not have a cluster housing option?
Correct, and any amenities that are proposed on the site.
But they're not doing any, they're doing a payment in lieu.
Right, because the amenities were not feasible, and they are also putting in the sidewalk as well along North Territorial.
Plus is additional, what'd you say, 81 trees? 52, sorry.
Well, sidewalk is required along North Territorial regardless.
The green zone between them and Burning Tree is also being largely maintained, if not exclusively maintained.
Between where, I'm sorry?
Between the road, the new road, and the...
Will you point to, can somebody point to that?
The houses to the west, yeah.
Let me bring it up get a better view. Hard time using the touchpad, sorry. Geez, sorry.
Well, take your time.
So it's the subdivision to the immediate west. The trees were, the buffer of trees that exists there is preserved, I believe, right?
It is. So what we did is we went and talked to all the neighbors on the western side because the cluster gave us the ability to add some setbacks from that where we would have otherwise put the road under a straight zoning. It allows to move the road over. We would add additional screening in front of these units. And then I went and talked to the neighbors and said, listen, when we're done with this process, we're gonna come back in and we wanna plant trees in your backyard. We didn't have any more room to plant on our buffer, okay? And plant strategic trees in areas that there might be some areas that were disturbed, and we would plant with pines, 8-foot pines. And we walked a whole street on that western edge there of all the property owners. Because we want to be good neighbors. We want them to welcome this project. And we opened it up for it. And during the public hearing process, not only were those neighbors included with the process, so were the other neighbors in the association.
So why did you have 2 public hearings?
Well, the first one was a result of us trying to make a deal with Eaton Condominiums. We had negotiated a deal with them, and 1 or 2 people on the board decided, after we got down with the discussions, that they no longer wanted it. We were gonna try to reduce the amount of impervious surface here.
I'm sorry, reduce the amount of what?
Impervious surface?
Okay.
We are gonna use their drive, and we are gonna pay into the association. And we're gonna face the houses towards, the entrances of the home would have been facing towards the east.
I know what just happened here, sorry.
That's all.
Well, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah, but I'm not, they're not incumbent upon to make a deal with me. And we thought it was a good idea too. Some of the members thought it was a good idea, but they respectfully declined. So we had to come back, redo the plan, submit it for the second time, and then we had some input from, we had some more input from Burning Tree, and then we came back down the third time. So I would say the first one was a misstep. I was not involved in the process with the neighborhood association initially, and it was a bit of a surprise for all of us. We got into the planning commission meeting, they had some objections. Listen, we said, fine, we're gonna still build a quality project here. We're gonna just use the road that we have now, improve it, and develop the homes.
Let's see right here. Okay, we're caught up.
So in the public hearing, Bob and Laura, what's a summary of the comments and how many people were opposed to it in each development? Where's this, we have any data?
Read the minutes.
Oh, you mean
not
the minute,
off the top
read
of
the
my
minutes
head,
from the
I'm sorry.
planning commission?
Watch the video of the meetings.
No, we need to have completed staff work. When we bring a document here, you bring the backup.
Come on, give me a break.
No, yeah, that's what, no, there's no break. You bring the backup. So we don't know,
So Laura is unprepared, is that what you're saying?
maybe.
Okay.
Leo, I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a historic marker. 30 years ago, there was a reception there for a sitting president, along with a current Congressman, Carl Purcell, at that house. And I would be glad to consult with my colleague, my friend who calls me once a week now, and is not regretting that he's not on the board anymore. But Jack Dempsey and I, if we can help with 30 years ago, George Bush was there for an afternoon reception.
You were there.
Yep.
You were there.
And this allowed us the opportunity to provide this historical, it was brought to our attention by the planning commission that I knew of Mr. Purcell only by reading about him, that we could create this marker, if you would, for this project. We're going to call it Congressional Court. Maybe we would have called it Purcell Court, but I guess the term is already used in the township.
Already a Purcell Street.
Yeah, so.
Well, he served 16 consecutive years, and his son has been very honorably serving as a Plymouth City Commissioner.
Right.
Okay, any other questions regarding the plan?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, anybody from the public would like to comment on this project? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Stewart.
I
you
move
take
to
your mask
adopt
off for this one,
Resolution 2021-05-11-32, authorizing approval of the Purcell Place condominium cluster housing option with conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Motion's made by trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Monahan,
Yes.
trustee Dorchevitz,
Yes.
trustee Stewart,
Yes.
supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy,
No.
treasurer Clinton,
No.
motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you all for your comments. Appreciate it.
All right, next is item F4. This is the Margate Cluster Housing Development and Agreement. Laura Hoff.
Do we have, excuse me a second, do we have a mouse available? I can't use this
Yeah,
touchpad.
we're getting one for this particular situation. We had to use all the ports,
Okay,
and so we've got something ordered for it. Thank you.
We have to do a budget amendment.
I hope not.
Okay, so, Ms. Hoff, you could take it away.
Thank you. This application, known as Margate Residential Subdivision, is at 9295 Canton Center Road. This is also a cluster housing option. And as I mentioned with the previous application, those 4 key steps of the cluster housing process, this is the 4th and final step. The project was approved by the Board of Trustees on August 25th, 2020 for a residential neighborhood with 30 homes. And since this time, the applicant has secured that site development approval plan with the Planning Commission. Following board approval, the applicant would then start working with the building department on permits and finalizing any Wayne County agreements. As part of the cluster housing process, a cluster housing agreement is required. Township Attorney Kevin Bennett has reviewed the agreement, and after several revisions, the final draft has been provided in your packet. We do recommend that final approval of the cluster housing development agreement is contingent on Mr. Bennett's satisfaction that all the legal documents are in compliance. We provided a proposed motion and resolution on packet pages 98 and 99 if it pleases the board to move forward.
Very good. Now, we have a representative of Margate here tonight who has also given us some handouts, so if you could come forward, please state your name for the record. And you are free to take the mask off if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. Tim Lochran, I'm the Director of Land Acquisition for Robertson Brothers Homes, 6905 Telegraph Road. I can go through the presentation if you'd like. I can answer any questions. We are very excited to be here. We have not built a community here since the Saddlebrook community on McClumpha, which was, we basically finished that through the Great Recession. So that was, we made it through. I think it's a great project. Not too far from Margate. And we've been obviously looking ever since. We think we found a perfect site here. We really like the location. We actually created an entire plan series just for this site. We're very proud of that series. We went through all of your ordinances, especially your design review ordinances, which was very important in creating these the elevations for the plans. We feel that we're a very good transitional use from higher density to the north and to the northeast. We feel that we're very sensitive to our neighbors to the south and how we design the site. We are providing for a connection from one school, middle school, Isbister, to the elementary school to the east. We have a continuous connection. I think it's being used anyway. It's just not very safe right now. So we'll have a paved surface with a crosswalk on Canton Center is what we're proposing through our development. And we are doubling the number of replacement trees, which was a request, and we were able to locate those on the site. And we actually have reached out to the neighbors to the south. There's 6 total. I've had conversations with 5 of the 6. I'll be meeting with them on site as we start grading so we can discuss siting trees on their property if they so desire as an additional buffer. So we've done that in other communities. We find that is something that's helpful with our adjacent neighbors, although we do believe we have a very deep lots along that south portion. I think they're 135 feet. But we do need to clear because of storm. We have to take the storm at the location, I guess it's not up there, but location of the property line. So we feel like this is the better option in order to help our neighbors to the south. And we are providing for a stub road to future connection to our south, which is the, we call it Farmer Jay's property, which would be, you know, for future development in the future. So we feel we're good transitional use. Again, we're very happy to be here. I'm happy to go through the presentation or just ask questions you may have.
Let me start the questions,
Of
but
course.
hopefully we can keep the map up and running. The location is really, I don't live too far away from there myself. The location is really superb for young families. You've got Isbister across the street, you've got Pioneer in the back. That pathway that you see between the woods and the ball diamond there is the path that my kids used to take to walk to Pioneer Middle School. It's heavily traveled. That's all the neighborhood kids use that path. And I understand you'll be connecting to that path as well. And then you've got, of course, the park, the high school complex to the south. So, I mean, I'm hoping that these are not, that this is going to, unlike the plan that we just approved, are we looking at empty nesters, or are we hopefully looking at families?
I think that's a great question, because when we first looked at the property, we were thinking empty nester. That was our initial thought at the site. We saw the same things you're talking about, and we felt it was a perfect use for a single-family neighborhood to bring families into the area, just because the location, to your point, has great connection to 3 different schools. So yes.
So yeah. Where is Pioneer and Isbister in this picture?
Pioneer's just to the east.
Isbister's right here, Pioneer, and then of course.
I'm sorry, Isbister is elementary school to the east.
Isbister, and that's Pioneer, and the high schools are down here.
All right, where is Farmer Jay's?
Would be a future connection, yes.
You mean a connection road?
It would be a stub road, just so it wouldn't be walled off from neighborhood. That was a request from staff.
I'm sorry, when that piece of property gets developed, which is vacant now, Farmer Ray Jay's, you would make a through road to Canton Center?
We have a stub road that goes right to that property line, so they could connect to that, which would just increase accessibility between the two.
If that property was developed, right?
It's when it will be developed.
I've made many phone calls on that. They're not ready yet.
You're going to demolish one of these houses here along Canton Center?
Actually, no, there'd be no, and that's a good question. That house will stay. So we're purchasing it from the Church of the Nazarene. All of that property is owned by the church to the north, and then through the property. And then there is a house that they own a little farther down. Actually, yeah, you're right there, which is owned by the church. The associate pastor lives there. So it is part of the complex. So we will not be demolishing that house. There is already I guess a vacant lot that would be used for our entrance off of Canton Center Road.
So when you were here last time, we did it, typically we approve it and then you go back and make some changes. It doesn't appear that you made any changes. And this development looks extremely dense and claustrophobic. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I would disagree in the fact that I think we're meeting the overall density of the area. Again, I think there's 3.4 units per acre to the north of us. We're at 2.85. So if you can look at the area, if you go back to the area, you can see that it really does transition. You know, as far as changes, we did make changes. I think since the last time you saw us, we did make that stub road. We have the connections to the schools, which is very important. We did double the tree requirement. We have met with our neighbors a number of times and discussed these, some of these issues. So, I mean, I certainly appreciate what you're saying. We feel that this is a very quality development. We feel we're meeting your open space requirements. I do have approvals, obviously, from the Planning Commission for the site plan, and we've worked out a lot of, I'd say, challenges and issues throughout the time. It's a very peculiar piece of property, just in the fact that it's kind of behind everything. There's no second connection. So it did not lay out very well from a traditional sense. So that is why we looked at the open space. We felt that this was an appropriate land use and an appropriate design for that location.
Have you built a novi before?
Yes.
That's what I thought. You are, I can just say, I had a house in Novi. I thought it was from Robertson Brothers. The nail pops were almost non-existent. It was an absolutely excellently built property.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Any comments or questions from the board?
That is a lot of houses. I agree with that. That was a concern. So again, Laura, if they didn't have the cluster housing option available, how many houses could they put on?
I believe it was 27.
I believe that was it. I asked my planner, and I don't know if he responded.
What was that number?
27.
27.
It was 27.
That would be helpful if you put that on here in the future, developed under the normal platted subdivision or whatever it is, so that way you have as a reference. So the number is 27.
And we're looking at 30
We're at
houses.
30. Is that correct?
It's proposed at 30, and under the zoning ordinance, 32 is the maximum.
Say that, no, that's not right.
Oh, right, because they are showing 30 houses in their diagram. You're not expecting to add 2 additional houses,
No,
right?
we're purchasing 10.58 acres, and at the density of the cluster housing, it's 3.05 units per acre. That would get you to the 32. We're proposing 30.
Right, but if it was under this non-cluster housing option, you couldn't do 32.
That's right. What is the number? That's my point.
She said 27.
It is 27, we're certain.
I'd have to go back and verify. When this was before the board on August 25th, it was presented.
Yeah, I just don't know that off the top of my head. I don't remember.
So go back and verify. Do we have the data? We can wait.
No,
The minutes.
we're not going to wait. Read the minutes. Okay, what else? What else do we have? Any other questions or comments from the board? Any other comments or questions from the board?
I would like to think it's a lot of houses. It is a lot of houses.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, very unique to receive an email, and I have a positive surprise for you. At 12:15, all of the board received an email. It was from a person that I find the highest credibility from and who has worked in this township for 16 years, Sherry Palmarchuk, and has worked in Northville Township, and she has a sterling reputation. And while I don't like to be read to, let me briefly paraphrase here. I have worked with Robertson Brothers in Northville, specifically formerly Ed Weber. You have big shoes to fill, Mr. Laughlin.
I can fill his shoes.
They were wonderful to work with. Adaptable, reasonable. They built a very nice product. I project this project will go smooth as a Pulte project. And this is a very nice presentation, and I encourage your consideration. Thank you, Sherry Palmarchuk. I think those kind of things should be encouraged because there's nothing like work experience to find out the reputation of a person.
Okay.
I agree.
Nobody on this board said anything disparaging about Robertson Brothers. Nobody.
And also, it's completely inappropriate to be encouraging employees in the building department to be making ratings on builders or what the status of a project.
She was not encouraged to do that.
I couldn't disagree with you more, 100%. Yeah, you want to vote against the township employees, and I want to encourage their voice.
Township employees are not the board of trustees.
That's right, the township employees, and we are not prima donnas.
All right, we're all off track. We're all off track. Okay, it's okay. So what, anyway, I just want to clarify that she was not put up to that. That was spontaneous. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor.
Well, wait a minute. I need comments or questions from the public on this project.
Well, I'm just going to make a comment.
Oh, you're going to make a comment?
Yeah, you asked for a
You were like teeing up for a motion, I thought.
No, I'm going to tee up for a motion. As a member of the board, as a 34-year experienced, Michigan's best educated experienced realtor. That's a fact.
42 years.
Yeah, yes. And I want to tell you, I've sold a number of projects in the Robertson building firm, and they've always done a wonderful job. All of my clients were wonderfully happy with their products. And so I can't speak highly enough of their reputation.
Okay. Anyone from the public? Again, the 3-minute rule is in place, and we would need your name and address.
Mary Wydell, 50439 Fellows Hill Drive, Plymouth. There's a few points I'd like to make on this particular project. First, I'll start off by stating something from the 2025 Draft Master Plan. Under the strong quality of life, it states, our township residents have long prioritized the quality of their community, particularly the quality of residential life, the natural environment, and the schools and other public services. This plan is intended to protect and preserve those qualities on which residents place such great value. So in looking at this development, it is currently a site with, it's loaded with hardwood trees that are 60, 70 feet tall. We don't have many sites like this in the township left anymore. And to see a proposal that pretty much wipes out all these trees and claims to be cluster housing, which Treasurer Clinton has already stated that to qualify for that, it needs to provide for some sort of preservation and additional features that benefit. So I don't see that here. Also, when having such a dense development across from a school, it increases the traffic for the school, for the safety of the children. There's also a connection between Ann Arbor Road and the neighborhoods to the north of this, down to the high school, where there is no sidewalk for the kids to continuously, stay out of the street and get to high school, whether they're biking or walking or whatever. So I think we're premature in developing this with so many lots on here when we don't have a plan for the community as a whole. Before this is developed and before Farmer Jay's is developed and even further, this will increase the amount of traffic in the homes 50 to 100% once it's fully developed. That's a lot more people on this road. And so I'd like the board and the planning commission to consider what can we do to make this safer for the community, maybe preserve some of the trees. Trillium to the east of or to the west of this subdivision proposal has preserved some of their trees. So there is ways of developing this without pretty much taking everything out. And that's what I'd like to be considered for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to comment on this particular project? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-05-11-33, authorizing the approval of the Margate Residential Cluster Housing Development and Agreement as recommended by the Planning Commission and contingent upon final approval of all legal documents by the Township Attorney.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
No.
Treasurer Clinton.
No.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. Next is item F5. This is the draft 2025 master plan. We do have 3 copies only tonight at our table because we don't want to take down any more trees. And it's also been online, and I would hope that everybody has had a look at it so that we're prepared for the meeting. So Laura, any comments or questions? Any other updates on this?
Just that, we're pleased to present this draft to the board. In accordance with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, the master plan must be approved for distribution by the legislative body, which would be this board, to all neighboring municipalities, regional planning agencies, and other utility entities. So this would include SEMCOG, Wayne County, all of the neighboring communities, Livonia, North Bell, Canton. for a 63-day period. At the end of that 63-day period, then the Planning Commission would hold a public hearing and recommend adoption to the board. So we've provided a brief timeline on packet page 142 of some of those key meetings. It indicates that the master plan will come back to the Planning Commission for at least one more meeting with a public hearing, and that this board, it would come back to for a meeting to consider adoption. And that is the minimum required by the state. There could be more meetings in addition to that. There is a proposed motion and resolution on packet pages 143 and 144 to distribute the master plan, the draft, for 63 days for the required comment period.
So if we approve this tonight, there is still a public comment period, or is that the end?
There is still a public comment.
Okay, and for how many days? I forgot.
63, it's required by the state.
Who do those comments go to, us or the state or you?
They would go to the planning department, they'll be reviewed by the planning commission, and then ultimately transmitted to this board, who will make the deciding factor.
So does this come back to us one more time?
It does.
It does, okay. All right, any comments or questions from the board?
Do you have a summary sheet of what's changed or deleted and added?
I can try to provide an outline.
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Because this is supposed to be a very minor, this was only to meet the letter of the law predominantly, right? Every so many years, every 5 years.
Every 5 years, correct.
Right.
And there are a number of areas that remain the same from the 2015 plan that are still relevant.
Yeah, I think to that point as well, and you know, the team, including Laura, did a really good job pulling this together. And the Planning Commission took it really very seriously. You know, we all studied it. We were committed to not just having it perfunctory, you know, check the box because we have to do it kind of thing. So we were really hopeful that it would be a, you know, a living a document that had, you know, some meaning to it.
Bob, I agree with your comments. First of all, Laura, excellent job on all these presentations. Thank you. But it would be helpful to have just a brief synopsis of what it is that has changed. Although I wasn't here before, but for those that have been, it'd be a nice edification for us. It would be nice, the new members, it would be nice to see what's changed.
Happy to.
Okay.
Laura, I'm sorry, just a question for Laura. At the end of the presentation, there's a future land use map
Correct.
with some zoning changes recommended. The fact that it's in this document does not make that so. What has to happen in order to make that the future zoning for Plymouth Township?
Correct. The future land use map and the master plan is an entirely different document and map than the zoning map and the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance and the zoning map are law, and the master plan is more of a community vision, an expression for where you want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So the future land use map helps kind of steer the community in that direction, but land changes to the zoning of a property are only happen if the property owner proposes to rezone, in which case there's a public hearing, or the township would initiate a rezoning, which we would also have to do a public hearing with the Planning Commission, and it would always come to this board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Stewart.
I move to authorize distribution of the draft Plymouth Township 2025 Master Plan for Land Use per the requirements of Public Act 33-2008 as amended, Michigan Planning Enabling Act.
Motion's made by Trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is item F6. This is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Ms. Hall?
The township zoning ordinance regulates single-family residential rear yard setbacks in Article 20, the Schedule of Regulations. And there are 4 different designations for single-family. The uses remain the same in those 4 designations, but the dimensional standards vary. So it's the R1E, the R1H, the R1S, and then the R1. In all of those districts, the required minimum rear yard is 50 feet, and that minimum of 50 feet is not proposed to change by this text amendment. The change that is proposed is to amend Section 20.2, footnote BB, which would permit the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is the body that is responsible for the review and authorization of variances, the opportunity to grant dimensional variances on a case-by-case basis for a reduced rear yard setback that would be greater than 10 feet for outdoor living structures only. So currently, footnote BB, it limits the ability of the Zoning Board of Appeals from granting a variance of anything greater than 10 feet. This exception would not apply to full building additions. That is, I want to add a den to my rear yard of the house, or I want to expand my living room and kitchen. This would only be for outdoor living space. Also, I want to note that this footnote revision does not circumvent the process for the Zoning Board of Appeals, so all of that remains the same. An application would still need to be made by a property owner, single-family residential property owner. The zoning board would still do their public hearing notice. All property owners within 300 feet would be notified by certified mail. There would be a public meeting and a public hearing. The Zoning Board of Appeals would consider the standards that are listed on page 146, 1 through 9. Those are the current standards in the footnote. Those would remain. And they would also have to evaluate the variance request to the 7 criteria that are in section 3111 of the zoning ordinance. Those do not change. So on page 146 of the packet, the change that is proposed is to add number 10 to footnote BB, which reads, exceptions to footnote BB may be considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals for outdoor living space, such as attached, screened, and/or covered decks, patios, porches, and 3-season rooms. Exceptions shall not be permitted for full building additions. This would provide, again, for some flexibility by the Zoning Board of Appeals on a case-by-case basis. The recommendation on page 147 of the packet is to approve the text amendment this evening for the inclusion of those 2 sentences.
Okay, couple comments first from myself is I was not a big fan of this concept when you first presented it to me. I wouldn't say I'm a total fan yet, but I want something that provides flexibility for the zoning board, and I think that's the important thing to remember. This is not like the fence, the text amendment that we did on fences where it's almost virtually automatic at this point. This is still something, so if I want to build a deck that goes beyond the limits or a Florida room or something like that, then I still have to go to the zoning board. So currently what has been happening is people are coming to the zoning board seeking relief from the board, which they're constitutionally entitled to, and the building department has been telling them, no, don't even bother to come to the zoning board because we don't have the statutory authority to listen to your appeal. So save yourself the $200 non-refundable dollars, save yourself the time and hassle. So I think this at least gives everybody their day in court in front of the ZBA to hear their case, and hopefully the ZBA will have the flexibility that they need. So my second question is, because this is a text amendment, and I want to clarify this tonight with the attorney as well, is that if we vote on this tonight, that's all we have to do. This is not like an ordinance amendment where we have to have a first or second reading. Is that correct?
That's correct. Because there is a public hearing before the Planning Commission, that in effect takes the place of the first reading. This is the de facto second reading.
Okay. And this has been This has been heard before the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Why is it not heard before the zoning board, since this impacts them? Is this just a separation of powers?
The Planning Commission recommends any text amendments to the Board of Trustees.
Okay. All right.
So I'm sorry, so this is, if we vote to approve this tonight, it's done, okay. The folks in the back had a property that was conditional upon this being approved. The zoning board approved it conditional upon this being approved. Sorry, folks, I gave you bad information. I thought there needed to be 2 readings.
Are you referring to decks when you're talking about outdoor living structures?
Correct. So if it were a deck off the back of the house that maybe had a pergola, that's still considered an encroachment of the principal structure.
Got it, okay.
What about concrete patio? Not included?
Mm-hmm.
Concrete patio would, at the grade, you still have to meet this requirement for concrete.
If it's covered.
Oh, there's the key word, if it's covered.
When it becomes covered, it becomes part of the house. And that's why the zoning board's hands were tied on these things.
Got it. Thank you.
Because it's attached to the house at that point.
Correct.
I'm concerned about this. The character of Plymouth Township is what it is because of the rules we've had for decades. And is this going to create neighborhood friction where in the past it couldn't be done because of the ZBA? Now some will get approved, some won't over the years. And now I'm going to have my potentially loud, it's going to be much louder than an enclosed house that will be closer to the neighbor's back bedroom or whatever. And now we're approving recently much more dense housing. Are we having a sidebar or what do we need? Do I need to know something? No, okay. We have much more dense housing in some of these developments. This rule will, a text amendment will exacerbate that. So now we will have people complaining that I'm hearing my neighbors having a party very close to my property. So that was a reason that Plymouth Township developed the way it was to have some space. So now we're squeezing it in. It concerns me that I know some people want to make an improvement to their home, but we cannot accommodate everybody if that's the home they bought on the kind of lot they bought. They may need to move to another lot that would allow the larger structural addition. So I'm opposed to this because it makes me nervous that previously ZBA approved almost nothing, fences, whatever, for a couple of decades. And the last decade, we're approving almost everything. So it's a change. Maybe it's better. I don't know. But,
well, I think that we need to look at the fact.
I'm sorry, John, you got something to say to me or about this?
I think that we need to look at the fact that we have a zoning board here of competent individuals that can make decisions based upon the information that's presented to them at the time of whatever hearing any individual of this township wants to present. So we are just simply giving them at least leeway now in order to do that.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, over the years, I sat on the ZBA for, I don't know, 8 years or so. And over the years, we've come back to the board because, sometimes there's unintended consequences. An ordinance was written a long time ago and it didn't account for, there's cases of just odd things that happen. And this one was, the genesis for this was an odd situation, right? But it shone a light on it. I totally agree with what you just said.
Yeah, no, I think
some discretion.
I mean, I agree with everybody's points. I think you've got to put some trust in the zoning board that they're going to make recommendations based upon the input and the special circumstances of the neighbors, right? It's not every single one of these is a unique situation, and as such, you got to treat it as a unique situation.
Right, exactly.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? Anybody in the public on this particular item? Sure, come on up. You're going to have to state your name and address for the record. Okay. 3 minutes, mask optional.
My name is Rick Petron, my wife Claudia. We live
You can remove your mask.
Take a mask. We can't hear you.
Rick Petron, my wife Claudia. We live at 45209 Woodley Way. I just want to kind of reiterate the point that Mr. Clinton made, and maybe do for Mr. Kermey to kind of maybe assuage your fears on this. When this issue first came up, it was last July, and we went in front of the zoning board in August. At that time, we were all working from home, of course, and so the day of the hearing, somebody from the zoning board came out to our property, and unbeknownst to me, by the time we got to the hearing that night, everyone else on the zoning board had come out to our property and walked it. What they had told me to a person is that before coming out to the property, each one of them would have been inclined to vote no on what we were asking for if they would have been permitted to give us a variance. After walking the property and seeing the special case that we had, they encourage us to pursue this as kind of like a two-step plan. So I guess that kind of gets back to the point of what Mrs. Monahan said, is that the zoning board did do their due diligence in our particular case, and on a case-by-case basis, again, having walked the property and seeing what the special situations were and the hardship that we presented, I mean, I don't think that there should be any fear here that they would not do that in the future. So from a personal and from the township resident that's actually going through this right now, I think it's important maybe for everybody to understand that.
Is your approval, so your approval is contingent upon what we do here tonight?
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, the zoning board approved our variance subject to this ordinance change being made.
Okay, so you don't have to go back to the zoning board after tonight?
No, that's my understanding, that no, once, and I mean, our builder is ready to bring the drawings in probably tomorrow or next
So what
week.
are you building?
So we built a new deck, right? And we extended the deck along the house, but the old deck goes out 16 feet. The current deck will also go out 16 feet. What we wanted to do on part of the deck is cover it with, it's by Mary Grovani, it's called a collapsible pergola. All it is an aluminum frame structure with, you think of a traditional pergola that has like wooden slats that stand up. All this is a set of motorized aluminum slats that you can control that'll either close all the way or open up all the way. Like, it's got 180 degrees of freedom. So the rest of the structure around there is open to the deck. It'll be attached to the house, and there'll be 2 aluminum posts coming down from the top of it. It's a 9-foot roof, flat roof. There'll be 2 aluminum posts that'll come down to it at the edge of the deck that will take the place of 2 of the deck rails, the 2 of the deck rail posts.
So the deck footprint now is not in a variance situation?
No, the deck footprint would, if we left the deck, yeah, we have a building permit for the deck. The deck is complete. The deck, because there is no variance for the deck, because it's not covered.
Right.
All right, so the cover is what's triggering, the covering is what's triggering the variance.
Yeah, according to Mark Lewis, once you put any kind of covering that's attached to the house, it becomes part of the house, and it affects the setback.
But is that a permanent structure? Because you just said it was.
It is a permanent structure. The reason why it's collapsible is because the louvers on the top collapse up and down, right?
Got it, okay.
The rest of it's there's a similar one, I don't think
He's selling it.
Beats, I don't think it's a problem with the zoning ordinance for the setback, but over in Ridgewood Hills by the same company.
Okay. Laura, if this was not attached to the house, in other words, you put 4x4 posts up with a cross beam and you attached the awning to that, there would be no ZBA requirement?
I asked that question of Mark Lewis, and he said once you put some kind of structure up like that, technically it's considered a roof structure that I guess the bottom line is that technically it does not have to be attached to the house.
Okay, so a pergola that's not attached to the house requires a variance, Laura, or not?
I believe the building department has interpreted that if it's within the rear yard and it's covered, then it is part of the structure.
I asked that question, that same question. I said, okay, what What if we just add another set of posts to this and move it 3 inches away from the house? Then it's not attached to the house anymore. Does it still require variance? And Mark Lewis said yes.
Doesn't seem,
Okay.
doesn't follow in my head. There's a gap.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Just
anyone-
as a disclosure, former very satisfied customers of Jerry Vorva.
Have you been on Main Street for 38 years?
Matter of fact, he lives in former State Representative Jerry Law's house, a former trustee and former, and I know exactly where he lives.
I remember you. We were at your house.
Yes.
May I offer a motion?
I remember. We were at your house.
Not to disparage his name, but if you saw the old deck, there was not one thing on that deck that was built to code.
Okay, all right. Anybody else on this particular item? Hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion from someone.
Mr. Supervisor, I
Stewart?
move to adopt resolution number 2021-05-11-35, authorizing approval of a text amendment to the Charter Township of Plymouth zoning ordinance number 99 by amending Article 20.2, notes to schedule of regulations, footnote, quotation marks, BB.
Motion's made by trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey?
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy?
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton?
Yes.
Trustee Monahan?
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. That concludes our regular agenda. Next up is public comment, limited to 3 minutes. Anybody would like to speak at this time?
You don't have to leave the room. Like an apology.
Okay, please direct your comments to the board.
Okay, all right, board. Kind of changes my comments. Give me a second here. Well, at the last meeting, we asked Mr. Stewart for a public apology. There's a small contingent of people here tonight, a lot of them have left already, that are representing a much larger group of people that want an apology from Mr. Stewart for calling us domestic terrorists. Maybe the board can do something. We want an apology, one way or the other. This is totally outrageous. We are very offended, and we're representing a whole bunch of other people. There's a lot of people you've never seen here before. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else at this time?
So I think we need to record that John Stewart wasn't, he left the meeting
Twice.
twice. But that needs to be in the minutes.
I don't know
If
if
we're gonna
that's
make
necessary
detailed
or not.
minutes, let's do it.
If someone's requesting that to be in the minutes, they will be.
I'm requesting it to be in the minutes.
They'll be in the minutes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Stella Liansky. I live at 46280 Green Valley Court. And I just want to say, do you all think that the disrespect that's being shown here tonight is acceptable? Do you think that citizens should have been called domestic terrorists and there's no apology? Do you think Mr. Stewart should keep walking out of here and not listening to what somebody's trying to say? If somebody doesn't, as a board, if you don't take care of that, then you are just as bad as he is. Thanks.
All righty.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I would also like to add to that. I agree. I think that, I think as in the leadership role that he is placing himself or has been elected to, I think that he needs to apologize by calling people domestic terrorists who are just merely protesting. I think that was just really rude, and it kind of shows his character and shows maybe what he really believes deep down. And as somebody who would say that, I think as citizens, we need to be concerned about that.
Did we get your name and
Oh,
address?
I'm sorry. I'm Cheryl Picard, and live at 1373 Sheridan in Plymouth, Michigan.
Okay, thank you. All righty, anybody else? Very good. We're going to move on now to board comments. I'll start things off. We will be meeting again on May 25th. Meeting will have some appointments to the Civil Service Commission, Historic District Commission, Environmental Leadership Commission, Planning Commission. We'll have the attestation for retirees, and we'll have just a discussion that night on the tree ordinance and Tree City designation. Laura, if you could join us again that night, that would be great. I think by having a tree ordinance in place, not only will we finally earn the Tree City designation, which is nice, it's something that we've actually checked off all the boxes except one. But if we had a tree ordinance, I think we'd be able to address some of the issues that we heard here tonight with more legal specificity and I think a greater understanding, not only by the board, but also by applicants who come before us for any kind of changes to their private property. Also going on right now, we have the Household Hazardous Waste Weeks in Livonia at the ERG Environmental Facility on, I believe it's Merriman, but everybody should have received a flyer in the mail except for Mark and Audrey. I don't think you got one either. But we've been trying to get the word out through Facebook and through our website. So right now, that started yesterday. Yesterday, we had 85 cars show up on day one, which is really good. And we're hoping for even bigger turnouts in the 2 weeks ahead. So please make plans to do that. Finally, Chief Phillips, I believe we will start administering vaccinations to young people starting when?
Yes, that's affirmative. The FDA yesterday approved the use of the Pfizer vaccine, only the Pfizer vaccine, in children between the ages of 12 and 15.
12, yeah.
12 and 15. We do have appointments remaining for May 18th with a second appointment on June 8th. So you can call up my office, my administrative assistant, if you'd like to make an appointment.
Okay.
Where are you doing this?
We're doing this at the Friendship Station on the Schoolcraft Road. 42.
Do young people need parental consent to do this?
They do need parental consent. So what we're doing is we're having them, their parents sign the Lane County form. There's not an actual signature line on it for parents, because most people, when they created these forms, mostly adults, but we're just having them sign it across the top of the form, and that's what most other communities are doing as well.
Okay. Let's see. Well, hold on, because this is my time.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just relevant to his comment.
Well, just ask him a question when it's your turn.
He said he was sorry.
Okay, so Chief, that will be, what's the date on that again?
Tuesday, May 18th.
May 18th, so that's coming up.
Yes,
really
next week, Tuesday.
Okay, very good.
We're going to get there, quick because, obviously there's going to be a lot of young families that want to get their children protected, especially before next school year.
Okay. Very good. Next, let's see, we will, as of now, I don't see the need for a study session on June 2nd. I think we had scheduled one, so I'll just officially cancel that tonight. And then on June 8th, we'll have hopefully the tree ordinance first reading, and then we will have the annual audit report from Plant Moran and Finance Director Ginger Moriarty. Any other questions? Does anybody have any questions for me?
Tree ordinance. Yeah. When will we get the earliest draft?
Well, that should appear in your agenda pack. Agenda packs usually are heading out,
so that close to the,
yeah. Right. Well, but remember, no, it's the 25th. The 25th is discussion only. We're not voting
so we'll
on
get
anything.
it. We'll get it. Yeah. In time for the 25th meeting for discussion only.
Yeah, it'll be in the agenda pack like everything else. You'll get it Friday morning. It'll be online Friday morning before the 25th. Okay, that's all I have. Bob?
No, I'm okay.
John Stewart?
Mr. Supervisor, with our backgrounds in Dearborn, are you aware, and I know Chief Titterington is aware of my relationship with Chief Haddad in Dearborn. Is anyone from Plymouth Township going to be representing at the World Headquarters on Tuesday when the President of the United States is there, and then the unveiling of the F-150 electric vehicle? Is anyone from Plymouth Township going to be representing us there?
You have to be invited, it's my understanding.
Well, okay.
I've been invited to presidential visits in the past, and I've taken a lot of heat for it, frankly. But you know, if the invitation was extended, I'd go if I'm available. I got to check my schedule.
Okay.
Who wouldn't?
I think it just shows respect.
Yeah, it shows respect. Okay. My points are this. The part-time economic development director has called me twice this week, and he has had a meeting with Optech. Gary Heitman has met with the CEO, and Optech is very anxious to leave Ann Arbor, and they've got 200 jobs coming this way to Plymouth Township. Rhetorical question, positive, Chief Phillips. Do you know what you just did? And you don't know. There's a very large Boy Scout troop that meets at First Methodist, and you're going to have boys, 80 to 90 of them, lining up for a vaccine. And you're going to then be allowing them to go to camp. Philmont, Charles Howell, Mackinac Island. And they can't go without a vaccine before the middle of June. So I hope you'll be willing to accommodate that flood of scouts, and we'll talk more about that on June 8th.
Wait a minute, John. Every parent's child is important.
I didn't say that there weren't, so I really resent your comment.
Oh, okay, be nice. Come on, everybody.
I'm very glad, but I just wanted you to know that the Boy Scouts will be there. They'll be the first to be lined up, and they contacted me, so I'm awful sorry.
All right,
Bob.
all right.
And I'm also appreciative to receive communications from Bob Antal, Eric Anderson, and Brent McMullen. They are the only part-time and 3 employees out at the Township Park, and they're glad that I voted with them. July 10th and July 17th, because of our supervisor, who is a state Metro Parks commissioner, the Michigan Philharmonic will be performing Pops concerts at Kensington, Maple Beach, and they have a whole new concession stand and restrooms out there. And if you want to add to that, you were informed yesterday, I guess?
About what?
That the Michigan Philharmonic will be performing at Kensington Metro Park?
Yes, they will.
Thank you very much, and good night.
Very good. Jerry Vorba.
No, just want to make a quick note of thanking Bob and the treasurer for their work.
Knock it off.
For their work on the ZBA and the Planning Commission. So thank you for doing that extra duty. I really appreciate it. And also want to thank the treasurer for his work on the golf course. I mean, everything is just working out beautifully there. And it's not just the weather. It's that we've got the right group in there to help make that a better place. And thanks for your work on the golf cart purchases also.
And I'd like to thank Laura Haw, too, for all of your hard work tonight. This was, you had every major agenda item had your name on it, so you did well. Mark Clinton.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, Audrey.
Yeah, I want to make a comment. It's about what our citizens have talked about here tonight. I was not at that meeting when this apparent comment was made by Mr. Stewart, but I will address it. I don't care how controversial it is. You elected me for a reason. We have to maintain decorum in our society. If we don't, then anarchy prevails. We have to be better than calling people names. I'm not saying Mr. Stewart called the name because I wasn't here. But if I have to sit here and listen to citizens of our city or township indict us as a board for not doing anything because we sit here silent, so we are just as guilty as the party that they are indicating has said and called them whatever name that is allegedly been called. That's not right. Okay, we all have our own opinions here. I will also say, however, that we live in America. We have a right to say what we feel. We have a First Amendment right. That doesn't make it right all the time to say it. We were taught that by our parents. So if we want to indict everyone up here, then you better think carefully about all of us who have said anything about anyone, okay? We here as a board are trying to maintain a good sense of decorum. At least that's why I got involved. Okay, we're not perfect. and emotions fly at one time or another. But we owe that to our citizens to be at least respectful, not only of the board here, but also of you. So I appreciate the comments that were given, as I see the people are outside. But, you know, don't indict the entire board for what it is that you think somebody here on this board has said that is not in good taste, that is not true. Okay, you don't need my opinion whether I think it's true or not. What you need to know is that we are here for you as citizens, for citizens only. Okay, we're not up here to listen to ourselves talk. Okay, so please, don't indict the entire board. I will be the one that will say that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Kermy.
Easy one. May we put Shred Day on the home page? I think that's coming up in June.
Yeah, it's
When-
June
when is
6th.
that?
It's June 6th, Shred Day. It's our joint Shred Day with the city.
And what's the,
It's a Saturday, it should be.
there's a max, right?
Pardon me?
There's a maximum amount you can bring?
Yeah, I mean, we always publicize it.
Yeah.
It's just early right now, and you gotta be careful about how many messages you send out all the time,
Right.
especially with the household hazardous waste thing going on right now. As soon as household hazardous waste is over with, we'll start pushing the Shred Day.
All right, can you give a status on the sidewalk repair program? How's things going? Where are they?
As far as I can tell, things are going well. Jeremy was not necessary at the meeting tonight, our township engineer, but they're moving forward, and we get a few questions once in a while. We forward them to Jeremy's office, and they're taken care of. So, I mean, I know the project is definitely underway.
I think he reported that they are now just north of, they started down by Joy, and then now they've moved north of Ann Arbor Road and are moving north.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So they're almost Ann Arbor Trail or past Ann Arbor Trail, maybe?
They're between Ann Arbor Road and Ann Arbor Trail right now.
Yeah, they're totally within their timeline, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And the weather's been fairly helpful.
Okay.
Last week was all raining.
Yeah. Anything else, Chuck?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
There's a motion to adjourn by trustee Stewart. Is there a second? Second by trustee Monahan. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.